surrender or extradition will take different meanings given these three or four different how do you call it, rules. So rules on extradition proceeding will be is defined thereat, while the international and humanitarian law in terms of surrender under that law will also be defined by the provisions of that law.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, if I will disagree. Yung extradition, mabagal po yun. Yung surrender, mabilis. Kaya po nang ginawa kay dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. We rely on the objectivity, the competence, and the fortitude of the members of the Supreme Court. They are there because of that. Nai-influence mo po ba? Can we influence the good justices of the Supreme Court?
Their standing in terms of the perception that they may be partial for one or another party. So therefore, they refrain from providing legal opinions on matters that are sub judice.
Hindi po ganun ang aking pagkakaintindi, Mr. President. Kamakailan po ay nagpalabas po at nag-approve ang ating Korte Suprema, Mr. President, ng rules on extradition proceedings, which I think took effect on November 10, 2025. Tama po ba yun, Mr. President?
That is correct, Senator Marcoleta.
May I know, Mr. President, that, or do these rules apply only when there is an existing extradition treaty between the Philippines and the requesting state?
That the court administrator says yes, answers in the affirmative.
In the absence of an extradition treaty, Mr. President, is there any legal process that the Philippines may rely on to surrender a Filipino citizen?
Apart from a treaty between two states, if there are conventions that we are party to as a member state, such as
So the lack of it, Mr. President, completely bar any form of extradition or surrender by implication.
by way of extradition, yes.
The rules refer to a requesting state with whom the Philippines has an extradition treaty. If the requesting entity is not a state per se, Mr. President, such as the international tribunals, o sabihin na natin ICC, do these rules still apply?
Strictly speaking, no, because the ICC is not a state.
So where do we stand now? Because ICC is not a state, and we have our own constitution. And there is, for example, a warrant of arrest issued by the ICC. But under our constitution, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty of property without due process of law. Which will prevail, the ICC or our own constitution?
Yes, as earlier manifested by the court administrator, the extradition treaty, the extradition rules does not apply to the ICC, but there may be other international conventions or agreements that the Philippines is a party to that may apply. But again, they have not identified which of these possible conventions, which of these conventions, if any, would be applicable.
Wala naman international conventions, Mr. President. As a matter of fact, the Philippines just withdrew from the Rome Statute. Anong basis nila ngayon? Ang nakalagay po sa ating, meron po tayong batas Republic Act 9851 po yata yun, if I'm not mistaken. Na pwede mo lamang i-process for extradition or surrender or whatever it is. First of all, what is the difference between surrender and extradition? Except for the spelling, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I was clarifying with the indulgence of the senator.
Yes.
What was the?
Ano po yung pagkakaiba, bukod sa spelling, ng extradition at surrender in the context of Republic Act 9851?
Well, the international humanitarian law is a law applicable to the Philippines. And it's between the state and its citizens as well as other parties, while the extradition treaty is a treaty between two states. So, surrender or extradition will take different meanings given these three or four different how do you call it, rules. So, rules on extradition proceeding will be is defined thereat, while the international humanitarian law in terms of surrender under that law will also be defined by the provisions of that law.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, if I will disagree. Yung extradition, mabagal po yun. Yung surrender, mabilis. Kaya po nang ginawa kay dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Does the principle of complementarity allow the Philippines to decline surrender on the ground that domestic institutions are able and willing to investigate and prosecute?
Yes, the court administrator is constrained to reply with the questions, a number of the questions raised, but she assures the good senator that she will answer as best she can, given the limitations that the matter is sub judice. And we have three justices of the Supreme Court present here who are currently hearing a number of cases by petitioner, our colleague, Senator Bato de la Rosa. So in that regard, they beg the indulgence of the good senator that it being sub judice, they would refrain from giving opinions outside of the rules on extradition proceedings.
Mr. President, am I made to understand that we can only request for, let's say, clarifications or answers lingering in our minds from the court in the actual litigation and not in a case like this where this is also a good chance to be able to take advantage of the teaching function of the Supreme Court? Kailangan bang nasa korte tayong lahat and there is an active case being litigated? Is this not a proper forum for the Supreme Court to also advise us, to help us in the context of being able to, let's say, lay down the foundation of a budget that will cater to most people?
In this case, according to the court administrator, they are not. They are prohibited from of issuing opinions on a case that is pending before it, and that they are limited to rendering opinions within the parameters and framework of the pending case.
Bakit naman parang selective, Mr. President? Alam po ninyo, napakaraming mga ongoing cases. Yung mga abogado po, palagi pong napagsasabihan, lalo na po yung mga trial lawyers na yung ating sub judice. Talaga pong, kung kayo po ay nag-aaral pa lang ng batas, first year ka pa lang, alam nyo na yung sub judice. Talagang, Sir President, pangangatawanan mo yan eh. Pagka ang isang kaso ay talagang dinidinig na, huwag kayong magko-comment. Estudyante ka pa lang, ha? Huwag kang magko-comment. Kasi baka napakagaling mo, ma-impluensya mo yung Korte Suprema. Di ba, Mr. President? We rely on the objectivity, the competence, and the fortitude of the members of the Supreme Court. They are there because of that. Nai-influensya mo po ba? Can we influence the good justices of the Supreme Court?
It is not a matter of whether the justices can be influenced or not, but more that if they issue opinions outside of the process that is of the case that is pending, that it may affect their standing in terms of the perception that they may be partial for one or another party. So therefore, they refrain from providing legal opinions on matters that are sub judice.
Hindi po ganun ang aking pagkakaintindi, Mr. President. Ang mga justices ng Korte Suprema, kahit nasan sila, kahit nasa palengke sila, nasa punerarya, kung nasa man, hindi magbabago yun. Ang batas palaging ganun. Kahit anong sabihin natin, our opinion will not even matter. Ang pinag-uusapan natin ay kung paano tayo makakahingi ng konting tulong sa kanila upang lahat ng ating alalahanin ngayon, para hindi nagtatalo-talo, halimbawa, mabigyan nyo na kami ng pangunahing guideline, halimbawa. Bakit naman po kung, halimbawa, retired justice na ng Korte Suprema, aktibo yung kaso, pinag-uusapan pa lang, meron silang column sa dyaryo, pero nagsusulat pa rin sila eh. Pero sila yung unang nagsabi sa amin, wag ninyo yuyurakan ng sub judice. Mananagot kayo dyan. Pero kapag ka sila, dahil ba retiradong Supreme Court Justices na sila, malaya na silang magkomento? Ano yun tinuturo ninyo? Hindi rin nangyayari. Meron po mga double standards, Sir President. Salamat po. Magpapasalamat na lamang po ako. Dahil sa napagbigyan ako na ang aking pong mga staff, Mr. President, ay pinayagan ng ating court administrator, mabigyan sila ng pagkakataon na sa tulong po ng clerk of court ng RTC na pinag-uusapan natin, mahimay nila po yung mga dokumento para sa ganon ay masettle po natin ang usaping ito at madali nating matuntun po talaga ang tunay na pangyayari sa likod ng kontrobersy na bumalot doon sa isang notaryadong dokumento. Maraming salamat po sa panahon, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, maraming salamat po sa inyo.